Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Working Wealth Podcast. Hope you are having a great day so far. As a reminder, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Haley.
And we are here to talk about financial planning and some helpful educational content and hopefully some fun and exciting stuff so we can have a good time here. So this is going to be really, really fun because we are starting a really good trend of only recording when we have voices that are just absolute garbage, which is really fun. So today it's Haley, though, not me. So I'm excited about that. But we'll make it through this, and we hope you guys hang in with us as we are managing the best way that we know how.
Right. So, somehow I managed Michael Scott.
Yeah, by Michael Scott. There you go. All right. So in terms of what we're talking about today, we wanted to spend some time just chatting about really some of the structure of how we view financial planning and how we build out content or build out topics of value or strategies for clients along their financial journey, or like while we're trying to build out a successful financial plan. And this is something that we've kind of coined along with some of our other partners at SmartPro Financial as the 5 areas of value in financial planning. And these are really, really important for us because it gives us not just a framework and a roadmap of how to talk to clients about different parts of their financial plan, but specific, tangible, or measurable areas of their finances that we can provide a desired effect, right? Understanding that every part of your financial life is interwoven and connected, but being able to identify specific things or strategies we need to address in different parts of your plan to make sure your entire strategy is cohesive across the board. So that sounds like a lot of stuff to say right there. I was
going to say it does.
Yeah, so let's take a second right here. So, but just jumping into the 5 different areas of value that we focus on. We break it up into cash flow being the number 1, right?
Okay.
Cash flow, we'll go through the 5 and then we'll come back and talk about each of them individually. Okay. But cash flow is always number 1 for us. After cash flow is going to be assets. Assets is the things that we have that are of value or they generate value for us over time. The third one is risk. Then we have taxes, and then we have legacy to round it out.
So it's cartel.
Cartel. That's you could say it that way. Or we could say instead of legacy, it's basically our word for estate and estate planning. You could just say it's cart or carte if you wanted to, right? We're going to have a lot of fun today. So
yeah, I just thought that'd be funny.
Yeah, that's right. So let's break down into each of those 5 areas of value and talk about them one by one. But for me, I deal with this every single day, all day long, talking with clients.
Right.
I'm going to put some onus on you, Haley, here because as you said in a prior episode, you represent the people.
That's right, I do.
So I think that's actually a very important thing. That's part of why we're doing this together is because, I can get into my own head and I can be very, very heady about certain things sometimes, but we want to make sure this is super relevant and helpful for anyone that's listening today.
Right. So I get to ask the questions that possibly you're thinking about while you're listening. So I'll do my best to represent you well.
That's right. It's not a voted position, by the way. So any complaints, you can just send them directly to the spam folder.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's correct. So let's talk about cash flow first, right? That's the first area of value that really, if we're having a conversation with someone about their financial plan or their financial journey and how we need to build out the right things for them, we start there because that is, in our perspective, that is the fundamental or foundational element of how we view, how we manage, and how we steward money.
Okay, so I definitely hear cash flow. Cash is king. Lots of little buzzwords kind of like that out there, right? I want, in a very simple explanation, what is cash flow and why should it matter to me?
Yeah, no, great question. So, from my perspective, or the definition I would give is cash flow is just how money flows in and out of our lives, and that could be a lot of different things, right? That can be your income from your job if you have a job. That could be profits from a business if you have a business. Maybe you own rental properties and you receive rents. Hopefully you're net positive on that on
So
a
it's
regular basis.
my money in, my money out.
Exactly. And
Okay.
that's to me, that's actually what you just said there is really helpful. It's not just your money in, right? And this is
Right.
why I always start with cash flow, because cash flow drives every other opportunity and every other decision we can make in our financial life. Because most people just think about their money in, right? Oh, I make $100,000 a year.
Right.
Or, oh, I make $22.47 an hour.
Okay.
Or my business made $1 million last year. Well, that's great. But
Well, you're not keeping all that.
right. So what do you do with your money, or how you use your money
Okay.
as it does come in is so much more important than how much comes in, right? And we talked about that in a prior episode around the three different metrics we track in our financial life, or the three
Yes.
metrics we believe are the most important,
Okay.
being net worth, burn rate, and saving rate,
Right.
right?
Because I guess what your cash flow is, your money in, money out, is how, you're just going to be able to do everything or do nothing.
Exactly. Yes.
I guess that's the reality.
Yes,
Okay.
and it's I like the way you said that too. Is, man, you got a lot of good ones today
Oh,
already.
dang.
We're like a minute in, and we got some
Woo!
great ones.
Go Haley.
but I once heard someone say, and I don't remember who it was, but it was a few years back. They said you can do anything you want in your life,
Okay.
but you can't do everything all at once.
Right.
Right.
There's choices.
There's choices. Like, everything has a priority play. Everything has a balancing act of something has to be more important now, and there's an opportunity cost associated with
course.
choosing one thing over the other, right? So thinking about that and how our cash flow works, or how cash flow is managed over time, is you do have to know what's coming in, but so much more important is how much is going out over time, and how that money is being allocated or intentionally aligned for your personal goals and values over time.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And to me, just to add to that, right, is I tell people all the time, we'll talk about this more in depth and in context, but the only way to build wealth, right, I think we talked about this before already, is the only way to build wealth is to have margin in your life to buy and own appreciating assets. And you have to have that margin in your life to, number one, have the resource to be able to buy those assets, but you have to maintain margin in your life to be able to maintain ownership of those assets over time. And that always goes back to what a lot of people call the B word, right? It's basically a 4-letter word for a lot of folks these days because
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
like, what? Where are we going with this? Should I
Yeah.
step in?
yeah. No, so if you know where we're going with this, what is the B word?
Is it budget?
Say it louder for
Is
the
it
people in the back.
budget?
It is budget, right?
Oh.
And I get a lot of people hate that word budget because, naturally it requires us to be disciplined, and it requires us to have a proactive or intentional aspect or perspective on our life.
Right.
But we know that if we are intentional, we're proactive, we can ensure we have margin to be able to allocate our resources towards bigger, better things in the future. But just for those that can't stand that word and you just decided to tune out because I said budget, call it whatever you want. I could care less.
And we're talking to you.
Yeah, we're definitely talking to you. I promise you that. Like, I've been doing this long enough to know I can figure out in the first 10 minutes of a conversation with someone if you're going to be successful or not. And I'll bet money on that, right? Because if you aren't proactive and intentional with how you use your money, you're not going to be proactive and intentional in building your wealth and having sustainable freedom in your financial life over time.
Right.
But you can call it whatever you want. Call it a budget, call it a spending plan, call it your allocation plan,
Sure.
call it your Merry fun plan. I don't care what it is, right? But you have to have some kind of strategy for how you use your money, whether that's tracking every single dollar and every cent, which we personally do because I'm just a nerd.
Because I'm married to you.
And yep, right? and
Default.
that's an easy way to get wealthy, right? Is marry someone who tracks their money. But
Yeah.
but no, that's
I don't even want to edit that out, but stop. That's
leave it
terrible.
there. Leave it there. No, but talking about this seriously, right? Is the whatever you call or to whatever level of depth you want to go, you have to have some kind of plan. And I see a lot of conversations with folks today is, even if you don't track every single dollar, where I'm going to start with you is saying, hey, how much do you make every single month?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, $7,000 a month. Great. How much is left over?
Yeah. And that is where when I hear the conversations, I'm hearing that like not a lot of people can answer that follow-up. Actually, a good number of people can't answer the first question.
Correct.
Or especially they definitely do it without tax. Like they include taxes before and taxes are even taken out.
Or like most people don't know their gross income. It's like, oh,
That's
well,
it.
I get a paycheck of $1,500 a week.
Correct.
Right?
But
Which
then they
is-
definitely don't know the second, which is how much is left over, so we don't know the margin. So we're not even really being able to proactively get to the second topic of assets and accruing those because we just don't know what we don't know.
Right. Exactly. And that, I'm glad you brought that in because that's where I was going is this all directly relates to your margin, right? So
Well, yes.
if you bring in $2,000 every 2 weeks,
Sure.
right? So it's about $4,200 a month in income, right?
Okay.
Net income taking in. But you're spending $4,200 a month. You have no room to grow wealth. You have no room to allocate towards things that matter, like having life insurance in place or being able to save for your kids' college or heck, put extra money towards debt if you have consumer debt or put extra money towards your mortgage to pay down your mortgage over time.
You're stagnant. You're just going to be stagnant.
Right. And that's why, you can obviously tell I'm passionate about this, right? That's why I'm so passionate about it because so many people today don't operate with the slightest semblance of understanding of where their money goes, and it's 100% on them. And I'll say that again.
Yeah.
It's 100% on you, right? No one is spending your money for you, right? So if you want to be successful financially, you have to take ownership of your decisions. You have to take ownership of where your money's going so you can allocate margin, build margin in your life and allocate margin to go towards things that actually matter for you.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think we do really, really well, or that we try to help people with, is helping them get out of their own way and see maybe a different perspective or a better way to navigate this so they can allocate money towards the right kinds of wealth accumulation activities, the right kinds of protection activities, the right kinds of tax strategies or whatever it may be, right?
So let's say someone does get, all right, yes, they have a budget and they at least have some they know what their margin is every month. So is that when step 2 kind of comes into it? Or the aspect of number 2 comes in? Or
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
okay.
Because
I think a lot of people want number 2, the assets, without
Everybody wants
talking
number
about
2. Yeah.
the realities of the cash flow. So that's kind of why I'm asking these questions a little more like they feel like interruptive because I feel like people want to go to 2 without handling 1.
Yeah. Well, and that's very true because the most common theme that I hear in conversations with folks today, and it stretches across every single generation of people, it's the 18-year-old that just got out of high school that wants to, start getting into rentals, or it's the 62-year-old that wants to retire and has a 401k and maybe a pension, and they want to stop working. They want to get away from something, not necessarily get to something, right? It all goes back to I want to shortcut the process to just get what I want today rather than doing the work necessary to build a sustainable path of success over time. But you're exactly right.
Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into what you just said.
And I could spend the next 3.5 days talking about this if we wanted to.
And as your co-host, I'm like, how far are we going to, how far
so
we want
we're
to
gonna
plow
take
through that?
We're going to take that. I'm going to put one final bow on that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to jump over to number 2, area of value and financial planning, right? So the final kind of key thing about cash flow, right, is cash flow is king. How you manage your money, how you steward your resources, how you direct your actual dollars on a daily basis is going to impact how you're able to build wealth over time. It's going to impact how successful your family is going to be and how well you're going to be able to create any kind of generational legacy or have impact on this earth, right? And it's so important, not just as you're building your wealth, it becomes exponentially more important as you start living off of your wealth, right? Because if you have situations in retirement where you're living on what we would consider a fixed income, and you don't keep track of your income, you don't keep track of your expenses, you find yourself in a position where your emergency fund drains down, or you just decide, well, I'm retired, I want to spend time doing what I want to do because you've worked 40 years and you feel, let's be honest, a little bit entitled to do so.
Yeah, that's the word deserved.
Deserve. That's the hard one, right?
We hear that a
It's
good
the D
bit.
word. I deserve this. I deserve that kind of
Right.
thing. But if you don't build in those behaviors successfully, you end up drawing down your money at a much, much faster rate. And that's just stressful across the board, right?
Yes, for sure. We don't want that for
We don't
anybody.
want that for anybody. Yeah. So that's why every conversation I'm encouraging people to have some kind of spending plan, have margin in your life so you can be successful
Right.
over time.
Yeah.
So we could beat that horse more dead, but we'll stop on that one
sure,
and jump over to number 2.
Okay.
So
Now we've got margin.
now we have margin. So if we have margin in our life, right,
Right.
we need to use that margin for wealth accumulation activities.
There's
right?
a lot of different things that you can do there.
There's a lot of different things. And that's why the number 2 area of value that I focus on is, I just call it assets, right?
Because that encompasses a lot of things.
It encompasses a tremendous number of things. Yeah, it encompasses your primary residence. It encompasses retirement accounts. It encompasses if you want to get involved in investment real estate, if you want to start a business, buy a business, if you want to have precious metals that are really pretty to look at, but they're not a good investment. Just let me say that out loud. Whatever that may be, if you want to have things that keep value or hold value over time, you have to be able to allocate money toward it, right?
Okay.
But that entire
Okay, and so what, sorry,
yeah, go for it.
interrupting, Haley. What is an asset? I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of people throw that out. Oh, buying such and such. Oh, it's an asset. Well, actually, I think it depreciates in value. So
Yeah.
what is an asset, Pat?
Yeah, so an asset is just any type of good, tangible or intangible, that retains value over time.
Okay.
Now, that can increase in value, which is called an appreciating asset.
Okay.
It can go down in value as well, which is called a depreciating asset,
Okay.
right? If something has a depreciating value, that means the useful value or useful life of that asset diminishes over time.
Okay.
Prime example of that would be a vehicle.
I was gonna say my
right?
car.
You buy a car for $40,000, and over time, the value of that vehicle goes down because it's no longer brand new.
Right.
It's closer to its end of life purpose, right? Now, a lot of those assets that have been depreciating in the past, they become a lot higher quality, so they depreciate at a slower rate, or you can get more useful out of them, like a vehicle. A lot of
Okay.
new vehicles today, they'll last for 25 years, right? But that's a depreciating asset.
Okay.
An appreciating asset will be something that goes up in value on its own or by nature of the system in which it's involved, right? 2 primary appreciating assets are always going to be real estate and businesses. Real estate, because the good Lord's not making any more land,
Okay.
right? So whoever owns the most land historically for the entirety of all of civilization, whoever owns the most land has the most wealth, right? But also with the business side of thing is whoever creates the most value for other people, they get the most benefit of the growth of their wealth because they own the business that creates or promotes that value for other people.
Okay.
Right? So great example of that is any kind of publicly traded company, Walmart, Apple, Amazon, Costco, Starbucks, whatever that may be, right? You think about companies traded on the stock market, right? They go up in value because they provide services that are of value, services or products that are of value to other people in society that are willing to pay for it.
Okay. So
Right.
what are some, I guess, main assets that that you see people are actually as a positive for people to get involved with?
Yeah, so I'd say a lot of the core fundamental ones, right, is home ownership.
Okay.
Is really, really important. Not everybody has to own a home, but I think that is a really good rite of passage for a lot of folks. And some of that depends on where you live, what your lifestyle is, what your career path is,
Okay.
those kind of things. But planting some roots and owning real estate as your home is really important. If you're thinking about growing your wealth to generate future income, though, right, that would be your retirement accounts. Right? That could be in any kind of investment account, be it a 401k at work, an IRA, a Roth IRA, a regular taxable brokerage account, things of that nature, where you're putting money into a type of account, some kind of vessel that holds things of value, and you use the money inside that account to buy assets that can increase in value.
Okay.
Right. So there's really, when we think about the investment world, though, like the publicly traded markets, there's three primary asset classes we consider.
Okay.
And that's
What
going to
are
be
those?
stocks, which represent ownership in businesses. Right.
Okay.
If you owned half of Amazon stock,
We wouldn't be sitting here.
we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be on a yacht somewhere with Jeff Bezos, probably, right? But I use that example with everyone, right? So,
He wishes I was on the yacht.
well, let's not go there, right?
I'm a fun time.
But yeah, so stocks is one of them. That's the primary one.
Okay.
That is the tried and true inflation hedge, right? And we say that because we have a historical track record of well over 100 years worth of history showing the stock market has averaged 10 to 12% rate of return over time,
Okay.
right? The second primary asset class we look at in the publicly traded markets is going to be the bond market or
Okay.
bonds. Now, when you own a bond or you buy a bond, you are loaning your money to a company, government, municipality, et cetera, and you are agreeing to a contract where they're going to pay you back interest over time,
Right.
and then you get your original investment back at the end of that period of time.
Right.
That's
you
what a
get
bond
interest
is.
off of that loan that you loaned them.
Exactly. It's kind of like a
Okay.
mortgage, right? But you're the one that's writing the mortgage
Okay.
in a way,
Right.
right? But in the same way that you could default on a mortgage by not making the payments, if you bought a bond that was high risk, and the company that issued the bond goes
Okay.
out of business, you could lose money on that, right?
Huh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, we could spend a lot of time digging into the bond market because nobody understands it, right? But it's relatively simple when you break it down
Interesting.
into the actual fundamentals of how you actually make money there and how that fits in a portfolio.
Okay.
So we talked about stocks, we talked about bonds.
Yep.
The third asset class we talk about in the publicly traded markets is what we call cash or cash equivalents. And cash or cash equivalents is really the most conservative types of investments where you have low risk but also low reward, right? This is CDs, savings accounts, money market funds.
That's more low risk than a bond.
Correct. Yes, because a lot of the cash and cash equivalents are secured bank products where they're guaranteed, or they are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
Okay.
So that's where you get more security out of it. But with more security
so
comes
if I
less
hear someone say, I want to
return.
pull out of this and I want to put it in cash, is that kind of what they're talking about?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. More than likely.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we have that question, we're always going to ask a lot of questions on it.
I know. I'm just curious.
But that's assets, right? So we could spend a lot of time digging into the complexities of different asset types. But the key thing to take away from here, right, is you have to have margin in your life with cash flow
Yep.
to be able to play offense. This is playing offense on building your wealth by using that margin to buy assets or things that can go up in value over time,
Yes.
right? So are we
That-
good on those two? Or
I think so.
you got another
And that
point?
brings us to our R. And
Yes.
Is that risk?
risk.
And
Exactly.
that would be our defense.
That's our defense,
Right.
right? Yeah. So when we talk about the category of risk, there's really two components of that.
Okay.
So one of those I would say is it's the insurance side, which is what a lot of people think of.
Right. And that's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, and that's the primary one.
Okay.
I would say. So risk being on the insurance piece is there's different categories of insurance.
Okay.
You have life insurance, you have disability insurance, you have health insurance, you have liability insurance, which encompasses auto, home, umbrella, business liability.
Disability.
Yeah, we talked about I mentioned
yeah.
disability.
Oh, sorry.
So there's a lot of different pieces of insurance there, which all those are designed to protect your ability to grow your wealth. Life insurance, that's to provide a tax-free death benefit if you
Right.
pass away early
Okay.
and your income potential diminishes for your family.
Well, what is that other side of risk that's not insurance?
Yeah, so the other side is what I would consider asset allocation. And that's more of a philosophical piece rather than a tangible piece of risk. Because going back to assets, you could own stocks, which have more risk associated with them, but also can grow your money faster. You have bonds, which are lower risk, lower return. You have cash, which is extremely low risk,
Right.
extremely low return. But asset allocation is an important part of building out the right portfolio to build your wealth by making sure you don't overexpose yourself on risk or underexpose yourself on
And I'm
risk.
assuming that the risk is very I guess it depends on the person and or the couple or an age and their personality. A little bit of all things, right?
It encompasses a lot of that, yeah. And that's where I would say you mold together the objective, like real financial pieces of someone's life,
Okay.
along with the emotional and behavioral side of their lives.
Right.
Yeah. Because you could have the perfect investment, but if you never own it, or if you sell out of it too early, or if you get scared when it fluctuates,
Yeah.
which a lot of people that happens to, right? If that does happen, then maybe that's not the right investment for you. And that goes back to the asset allocation piece of the mix.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. But the key thing, I think the key takeaway here is with risk, that's how you're playing defense to protect your earning ability, to protect your assets, to protect your income, your family.
But it's
all
also
those things.
simultaneously a little bit of offense.
In a way. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the best offense is a good defense,
Well,
is what they say,
well.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest sports guy, but I think I've heard that one 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's the key thing about risk is just making sure
Okay.
you're covering your backside, if you will. Yeah.
Cool. I feel like that's 3.
Okay.
What's 4?
So 4 is the fun one. This is the one that everyone
Taxes.
wants to talk about.
Taxes.
Taxes.
I'm trying to
Taxes.
remember the card with the L at the end.
Excuse me. Yeah. So with taxes, this is really important, right? And I think that you have to understand a few basic truths about the tax system in America, right? In America,
Hit us. Let us know.
if you make money, you owe taxes on making that money. Now, we can talk about whether or not that is philosophically good or bad or correct. We can go back to the early 1900s when the income tax was put in place and
It's
all
just
those
a
things.
fact.
Let's just consider it a fact for where we are.
Right.
And the reason why I view it that way, right, is whether it's right or wrong, there are many, many federal judges. The one that comes to mind for me most clearly is a guy named Judge Learned Hand, and he was back in the 1929 or sometime around the Great Depression.
You do love this quote.
I love this. He was quoted as saying, "It is your American obligation to pay as little taxes as you could owe." So who am I to argue with that, right?
Especially with a name like that.
Exactly. So the key thing with tax strategy or tax planning as part of your financial plan is making sure that we avoid but we don't evade, right?
100%.
Avoiding taxes is doing everything within the legal right to reduce your tax liabilities on a regular basis and for your lifetime.
Yeah, that's a completely different thing.
It's a completely different thing than evasion, which
Right.
is a felony and it is going to put you in jail,
Right.
more than likely. So we don't want to do that. But when we think about tax planning overall as part of your overall structure, an important thing you also have to understand is the tax code is built for business owners. It's not built for employees, right?
Right.
Business owners get the most benefit because they take the most risk, right? They provide the value of jobs. They provide the value of creating commerce. They provide the value of providing opportunity for others to make income. And therefore, by doing that, they are creating a larger base of revenue to be taxed. So it makes sense that businesses can have certain tax deductions and tax benefits.
Right. Yeah.
And we could debate that for a long time with people. But that's my truth. So we'll call it what it is, right? But the tax code is built for business owners. There's a tremendous number of deductions and tax credits and opportunities that people can use to save if you run a business.
Taxes.
Yeah,
That's just a very broad word
it is.
for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much wrapped up into that. And also, at some point, is doing your taxes the best thing for you? Great question. It might not be.
Yeah.
Or you might be really great with TurboTax. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
don't use
kind-
TurboTax though.
Okay.
Their whole goal is to get people into debt. So
Okay.
it's in their public company statements. You can use Tax Act or something else.
Okay.
But
But they're doing a good job with marketing.
yeah, they
'Cause
are.
That's the one thing that came
Well,
to
they
my
bought
mind.
MailChimp and they own QuickBooks and they own all these
do
other
they?
things to funnel people in to sell debt to.
Look
yeah.
at the things you learn when you talk with Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I guess, so if like someone's listening, right,
Mm-hmm.
and they hear us talking about these different things, they get, okay, cash flow. I understand what that is, and I understand how I can be working towards improving my cash flow. Assets, I get it. Investing, how I'm improving there. With the insurance over the risk side, they're like, okay, that's something I can have someone evaluate. But I guess when it comes to taxes, like what's a tangible thing, I guess, or not tangible, like a bite-sized thing, or what should I be thinking about when it comes to taxes? Should I be, is the thing I should be considering is, do I need expert advice? Do I need someone who knows more than me to look into this and see, is there an area for me to improve?
Yeah. So I would say it's always a good idea
Okay.
to have someone else look over your shoulder, even if it's for a spot check,
Okay.
right? And even if you've had someone who's been doing your taxes for years,
Because
having a spot check on that is important.
I'm going to share a story,
Go for it.
and this might be on you.
Please
Early
do.
on in our marriage, you were doing our taxes.
Yeah.
And I was great with that because Patrick is a smart guy, and I knew nothing about it, and you did them. You did them the year that we lived in Georgia, and we moved back to South Carolina.
Yep.
That following year, or 2 years after that, we had someone look at them who actually is a registered
She's an enrolled agent.
agent, right? Okay. So we went through that, and then I don't know if you asked her to look back, or if she looked back. I don't know how that happened,
I know where you're going.
but you missed something,
Yep.
and I get to hold on to that.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what it was? This is not me. Like the reason
I'm just
why.
sharing an experience of you can miss things.
Yeah, because you're not a professional, right?
Right.
And it was,
Yeah.
and what it was. So this is not the reason why I dug on TurboTax a minute ago, but I was using TurboTax.
Oh.
And what happened was
I knew about it.
we double withheld between Georgia and South Carolina.
Okay.
And Christy identified that we didn't get the appropriate amount of refund from one of the states.
Okay.
And I think it gave us back like $1,800.
Heck yeah, it
Which
did.
is a substantial
That's
amount
right.
of money. Like that's not, that's nothing to forget about. Like that's good money.
Yeah,
to
well, I
remember.
remember the story.
Yeah. So, but working with a professional allowed us to find that efficiency.
Yeah,
And to get that margin back in our lives, so we could have that to go towards
absolutely.
other things.
Yeah.
Right.
I just remember that.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a good example of it, and it's a personal one
Yeah.
too. But that's a minor one. Like I see a lot more things where, with clients we've been able to do transactions of several $100,000s that are,
Right.
net tax zero, based on their inclinations and priorities. And to me, that's a huge thing where we can provide tremendous value as your complexity grows. But that goes back to your point of, when should you have a professional or should you have a professional?
Right.
I'd say anytime you have a major life change, right? Major job change, have a child, lose a family member, start a business, close a business, anything where you have a substantial change in your financial life, it's always good to get a second opinion and make sure that you have someone looking over that to really ensure you're taking advantage of things correctly.
Yeah.
And we're, just for clarity, for compliance, like we're not tax advisors. I'm not an enrolled agent. I'm not a CPA. I don't file taxes, but I'm a student of the code and I love learning about it.
Yep.
And I think it's important to understand how that works to make sure you get the best benefit. And you can do what Judge Learned Hand said of paying as little taxes as
Right.
legally possible.
Right. So then that parks us with the L of legacy.
Right.
Which is something we hear about all the time in this space.
Yeah.
People have financial planning firms named Legacy. There's legacy planning.
Yeah.
Let's start to try and pull the thread on that one.
Yeah. So in summation, I would say the legacy area of value is ultimately what is the impact you had when you pass away?
Right.
When you're no longer on this earth, what is the influence or the impact you've been able to leave for other people, right? And that can be like really ethereal and, self-actualized, like, impacting a billion people, right? Like they can be that level, or it could be, hey, I didn't leave debt
To my children.
and a trashy, estate for probate to deal with.
Yeah.
Like it could be everything in between that, right? And so
oh, yeah,
when we
this
think
is going to be
about-
definitely individual.
very individualized, yeah. And I have some clients that they have no desire to leave money to their kids, and I have some that would rather, live a lower lifestyle in retirement to be able to leave more, right?
Okay.
But regardless of that, everyone needs a good estate plan. everyone needs to be thinking about that legacy strategy and how they plan to leave an impact for others. Because you can have a positive impact or you can have a negative impact, right?
Right.
Think about all the people in history, major world players, that some are known for really good and some are known for really bad. And that's not to take it to the nth degree that to say that everyone listening to this right now will have that much impact, but you could, right? You could have a generational impact where, it's very easy to see the math as $100,000 today could turn into $200,000 7 years from now, could turn into $400,000 7 years after that, could
Right.
turn into $800,000 to $1.6 million to $3.2 million to $6.4 million, right? Like
going.
generationally, that money can keep growing and growing and growing if you do the right things with behavior, right?
Right.
But when we think about estate planning, there's really some fundamental basics you have to understand, right? When everyone passes away, your assets have to go somewhere, right? And a lot of people have this misnomer, or they have this fallacy or belief that's a fallacy that is that the state's going to take your assets. That's not true. Legally, the state can't take your assets, right?
I didn't know that people felt this way.
Yeah, I have that conversation a lot where people say, well, I want to get a trust so the state can't have it. Well, that's not going to happen, right?
Okay.
It's going to be probated. It might be probated by a state-appointed representative if you don't have a plan. Like if you die intestate, like without an estate plan, without a will, the state's going to decide what happens to your
All
assets.
these little jargon words. I'm like, huh?
I know.
What?
And I'm trying not to throw too many of these in
Die
here, right?
intested. What?
Yeah. But if you die without a will, that's what is
Right.
called intestate, right?
Okay.
But if you have a will, if you have a plan, you do things appropriately and accordingly, you can ensure that your assets efficiently transfer from
Meaning
one
they
generation to
don't
the
go
next.
into probate before they eventually find themselves to your
Yeah,
family.
some things will always go into probate.
Okay.
Or for the most part will. You have to probate your estate if you have anything of value, right? But you can do certain things to have your assets transfer more efficiently around it, right?
Okay.
So there's 3 different ways your assets can transfer when you pass.
Okay.
You have by contract, by law, and then by probate or by estate, you could say. If you have things by contract, that's things like a beneficiary arrangement on a life insurance policy, a beneficiary
And that's very
arrangement on
cut
an
and
IRA.
dry.
Very, very cut and dry.
Right.
Yeah. So like
That's why we have those.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a good, helpful reminder for everyone. If you haven't reviewed your beneficiaries on life insurance and investment accounts recently, please go do that. I was once meeting with a couple a few years ago that they're not a client, so I'm going to share the story anyway. But it was
I remember this. I know where you're going.
it was about a $900,000 401k, and I'm sitting with this couple, and I looked down at the statement, and I said, "Who's this?"
Oh, no.
And
Don't
the
do
wife
that.
leans over and she says,
Oh, God.
"That's his first wife. I'm his third." And I said, "Well, that's a problem because if he dies, that money's going to his first wife by law, right?
No
Or like
wonder
by contract,
He
right?"
didn't want to hang out with you.
Yeah, and it's okay.
anymore.
I didn't get that business, but I didn't care because I still showed them value, right? That was a $1 million mistake with an estate planning perspective, right?
Yeah, I know that's really funny. I mean,
So-
it's not funny, but it's funny.
So regardless if
that
they
you had
wanted to
that
pay me a fee,
experience.
it was still an important thing to point out.
That's right, it was.
So you have by contract, that's beneficiary arrangements. You have
Okay.
things that pass by law, right? And that's like an ownership arrangement on assets. So if our house is joint tenants with rights of survivorship.
Okay, right.
If you have a bank account that has joint owners, if you have a payable on death designation on a bank account where it's not a joint owner, but the money will go to someone else when you die, all they have to do is file a death certificate.
Okay.
Those things are by law. That bypasses probate in the same way that the contract side will bypass probate.
Okay.
Everything else, if it's not owned in a trust, if it's not planned accordingly, is going to have to go through that probate process and be included in your probate estate, right?
Okay.
We can get into the details of like probate estates and taxable estates. We won't do that for right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But the key thing I
Later.
would say is understand you need to have an estate plan if you have anything of value in your life,
Okay.
right?
Anything of value.
Anything of value. Yeah.
That's so
Intentionally vague.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody listening might think, oh, I mean, I don't have a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really worth a value? Are you talking about any summation of money?
Yeah. But remember, and this is an important thing. When I say estate plan, I don't mean like you need to go get a will and a trust and all this kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
The starting point of an estate plan, because again, we're not lawyers. We don't draft legal documents.
No, we have one.
We have them, and we refer this out to people, and I do review them for people to help just understand, well, this is how you have it set up and pointing out those details. But the foundations of estate planning is making sure your beneficiaries are set up.
Yeah, this is like the
making sure you
bow
communicate with
on
people.
top of the whole
Right.
outlook and the whole present of the whole financial situation.
Exactly. Because why would you want to work so hard for so many years to accumulate a net worth of whatever size,
Right.
just to have it be, misused, abused, allocated in the wrong direction,
Right.
not appreciated by the people that are going to receive it down the road.
Okay.
That's where, to me, like even the purpose of us building our business goes back to that generational impact.
Right.
Not just what's going to happen for Samuel and whatever other kids we have down the road, but it's what kind of impact can we have, in the world, by doing things like this, like communicating about
Right.
educational things.
Well, I
Or
hope this has
also-
an impact.
It'll have some kind of impact. We'll see if it's positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
But
See if we
but
get
this is
5
all-
views on this one.
right? They're gonna have a hard time listening to you, is what it is. But
I don't blame
or
them.
they might get tired of listening to me. I don't care. It is what it is. But the key thing is, right? You can do. There's so many things in financial planning that you can do that are just baseline, fundamental, low hanging fruit that you don't need an advisor for, that you don't need an attorney for, that you don't need a tax person for,
Okay.
right? But you have to understand what those things are, so you can be successful and make sure your life is more efficient moving forward.
Right. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I think that was a pretty good job at giving us some pretty good information about all those topics without completely drowning in one. So
Yeah.
I feel like we did really good there.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess just to wrap it up then, because we've been going for a little while,
Okay.
what would you say?
Uh-oh. You're going to ask me a
I'm
question.
going to ask you the question.
Never ready for this,
I'm gonna ask you
people.
the question.
We don't talk about this beforehand.
Right. So how would you summarize
Oh, no.
what the key takeaways are for, like, if somebody was listening to this and they say, okay, these 5 areas of value, I've never thought about it in these terms before. What would you say, just from the people's perspective, would be the key next step or key focus area to address moving forward?
Yeah, my takeaway would be this is super simple. I got this. Yes, I'm so excited. I would be encouraged by knowing that I have control over a few of the things that we talked about, like figuring out how much I have coming in and how much I have going out. That's not going to be a quick process necessarily to figure out. It can take up to 3 months sometimes to really get a good grasp, but you have control over that. You don't have to worry about someone else getting back to you. You can start by figuring that out immediately. And I would also be focused on, okay, here are the things that I know that I can control. And maybe I do need to start trying to figure out, do I need a professional for taxes? Or do I need to make sure that I have all the insurances that are necessary so I do have my defense while I'm just going forward trying to actually grow and become more financially well? I think there's a great balance of encouraging because you can do it, but also some guidance of, hey, someone else can come alongside you and help punch you through and just help you just continue to get better. That's what I would take away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, well,
I can't say anything better than that. So that's a win right there.
that's so funny.
Yeah. Well, I guess with that, we'll just wrap up with that final thought. But we'll definitely keep expanding on this and keep talking about it. I see a lot of opportunity for us to dive into each of those 5 categories or 5 areas of value.
Oh, for sure.
Individually. And we could build out content for the next few years. So let us know when you get bored. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys. See you next time.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated.